Hi guys, and welcome back to Hartland Studios. Today I'm going to be starting a new series of videos where I'm going to review all the Spider-Man movies and hopefully come to a conclusion on what I think is the definitive on-screen Spider-Man experience. To start this series off, we have to jump all the way back to 2002, which is actually the year I was born, and the film we're going to be starting with is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. After the success of X-Men in 2000, Marvel fans were waiting for the next big superhero to jump onto the silver screen. When Spider-Man came out, fans were amazed. It was a huge success, making over 39.4 million in its opening day, which is just a massive success for any superhero film back then. That's enough about me talking statistics. We're here to see if Spider-Man holds up today and if it's still really as good as we remember. After recently rewatching Spider-Man, I realised I actually have a lot more to say about this movie than I thought I would, so let's get straight into the pros and cons. During the watch of this film, I could only really find a few things that I wasn't too keen on, one of them being, as the movie opens up, we see Peter and Harry on a school trip that would change Peter's life forever. There's just one person here in this section that really does my head in, and I bet you already guessed it. Yes. It's the teacher. Look, I have nothing against whoever cast this movie because some of the cast is absolutely amazing, but this guy looks way too young to be in charge of these guys, and the way he speaks to some of his students is kind of weird with the whispering he does. It's just it's strange. Moving on, this one is a slight nitpick, but it gets on my nerves every time I watch this film, and it's just after Peter's discovered his web shooting abilities and he decides to have a little bit of target practice in his bedroom. During Peter's web shooting antics, you can see that he webs and pulls towards him a blue lamp, which then smashes against the wall. Later on, he's seen talking to Aunt May through the crack in his door, and the lamp is back on the shelf. Now, it's very easy to make continuity mistakes in a film, but I don't know why this one gets on my nerves every time. Again, it's really nitpicky, it's not really a bad thing, but I don't know, it bugs me. Now, I know that Peter loves MJ, but man, you've got to stop screaming her name every time you're trying to save her as Spider-Man. I'm really surprised that she didn't find out he was Spider-Man earlier, or at least be a little bit creeped out that some random guy that she's never met before just knows her name, like I would be. So everything else I've stated so far has kind of been a little bit nitpicky, but this one is probably the only big problem that I saw in this film, and it's when I think it's just after Goblin talks to Spider-Man about joining him and being on his team, and how much they can destroy, and a paper is published in the next scene that says something about citizens call for Spider-Man's arrest, which obviously reference to how Goblin says no matter how much you've done for them, eventually they'll hate you, right? That's what that reference is. But then throughout the entire film, we never ever see any civilians or anyone in New York actually being negative towards Spider-Man, apart from the one police officer, that building fire, who says you better come back, I need to arrest you, and he says I'm not coming back, and he seems alright with it, he just lets him go and everything's fine. And then even towards the end of the film, where Green Goblin's about to stab him with his glider while he's hanging, all the people on the bridge start throwing cans and helping Spider-Man. They're like, if you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. And I'm just like, that's great, because it shows that Spider-Man really is involved with the city of New York, and it brings more to his character, but not when you say all the civilians hate him and they all want to arrest him and all this and all that, because they don't. Now on to the pros. Man, where do I begin? I loved revisiting this movie. One of the things I really love straight off the bat and at the very beginning of the film is it's very quick to let the audience know the position of all the characters and what they're feeling and what they're up to in their lives straight away as soon as we meet them. For example, we are shown straight away that Peter is an absolute loser, right? Because he's missed the bus everyone's laughing at him, and not even the bus driver will stop to let him on. MJ, on the other hand, is super popular, liked by everyone, but she also doesn't really seem content with where she is at in her life right now. Like, she never really seems happy, and I get that sense, I get that thought from just the look in her face when she's on the bus. Like, she doesn't seem happy next to Flash. She's just dealing with it. Then just a little bit after, we meet Harry, who's in his father's car, and he always seems to really be like living in Norman's shadow, and he seems embarrassed of who he is. He asks his dad if he can pull around the corner so he can get out of the car, because he doesn't want to be seen getting out of his dad's car, because it's all posh and it's, you know, they're really rich and all the other kids are just normal, and that's what Harry wants to be. He just wants to be normal. In my opinion, this is a great way to make the audience fall in love with the characters straight from the get-go. The audience can already empathise with the characters, they know how they feel, and maybe they can even associate how they felt before in past experiences, or how they feel now with the characters, and they've only been on screen for a couple of seconds. Later in the film, we see Peter leaving for school, and at the same time we also see MJ leaving for school. Now, what I actually like about this scene is that before this we see Peter get a loving goodbye from his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and on the other hand we see Mary Jane getting shouted at and arguing with her dad, and you know, she's really not having a good time. Her morning's not off to a good start. What I love about this even more is that in school, MJ is the liked person, right? So like, she's really popular, everyone likes her, she's having a great time in school, while Peter is a bit of a loser. He's always by himself and he never has a good time at school, really. Whereas at home, they're both completely different people. MJ has a terrible time at home because she's always arguing with her father, and Peter has an amazing time at home because his Uncle Ben and Aunt May are so loving. And it's just like, I like how they've been flipped, how like their lives are completely different in different situations. I really like that. I also really like this, adding on to the past point that I just said, because up until now we've only really seen Peter's side of MJ, which is that she's perfect and her life is amazing, everything goes great for her, she's popular, everyone likes her, when really she has her own problems too. She's just human like him. The next standout moment in this film for me is the suit created montage. Now, I love this scene because it is just iconic. It's not only satisfying to watch when he's drawing up all the suits, but it's also something that I just always comes to mind when I think Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man, and like that costume montage comes straight to mind with a lot of other things, but that's one of the main things that I'm like, man, that scene's amazing, and I always remember it from this film. I love this scene. With great power comes great responsibility. This scene breaks my heart every single time I watch it. Cliff Robertson does an absolutely outstanding job of being Uncle Ben and just warming my heart for the short time that he's in this movie. This small scene where Uncle Ben is like trying to express his worries to Peter is just so heartbreaking to me because we know exactly what comes next. Uncle Ben is such a gentle character, and when Peter is seen throwing everything that he said to him back in his face, it just really hurts. This scene, in my opinion, is crafted absolutely perfectly, and the most gut-wrenching thing that Peter says in this like scene is when he tells Uncle Ben to stop pretending to be. This is just after Uncle Ben says, "I know I'm not your father," and apologises, and Peter says, "Stop pretending to be." Man, that hurts. Seeing the look in Uncle Ben's face after Peter has said this is just, it's horrible, because he's in complete disbelief that Peter has just said this, since he's normally so kind and caring. I could go on about this scene for absolutely ages, but we got the rest of the review to do. I just think it's the perfect way to lead into Peter's guilt later in the movie. One name, J.K. Simmons. How could I not mention him? This guy is JJ. He's absolutely phenomenal in all three of these Spider-Man films, and I just don't think they would be what they are without him. The casting for JJ in this movie is just unbeatable. You can even look to the MCU. They have amazing casting. Some people that just portray these characters perfectly. But in my opinion, the casting of JJ in these films will never ever be beaten. This guy is JJ. He is this character. From his appearance to how he speaks to his body language, J.K. Simmons just does an absolutely exceptional job at being this character, and every scene that he's in throughout this trilogy is just hilarious. He's the comic relief of the whole series. He does it perfectly. J.K. Simmons, you're a god.
Yeah.
JJ as a character in this movie though is also really well done. The way he bullies Peter, I guess you could just say, it just works so well. And one of the standout scenes is where he's actually very different to how we've seen him throughout the rest of the film, and he actually protects Peter. When confronted by the Goblin, JJ actually refuses to give any information regarding who takes pictures for Spider-Man when Goblin demands it. This, I think, is an amazing scene because it shows that even though JJ is very rough on the outside and like he's rough on the edges and he's not a very nice person at all, underneath it all he's actually really honourable and just his heart is in the right place sometimes, not all the time, but in this scene I just think it's really good because it shows a change of heart and he actually can be a good person when he wants to be. Now I want to move on and talk about more of the action scenes, where one of the things that stands out most to me is how in some sections of a fight they'll just take out the music completely and leave us with nothing but natural sound. This can be seen where Peter is fighting Bonesaw, when Spider-Man is searching the burning building for Goblin, and also in the final fight with Goblin. Something about the natural sound is just really special to me because even though music can really amp up a fight and make you excited or nervous, one of the best things that the natural sound does for me, in my opinion, is it makes you feel as if you were actually there, as if, you know, that's all you'd hear if you were actually present. You wouldn't hear any music, you just hear punching and screaming and, you know, all the gritty, nasty stuff. It's just, I don't know, it feels more realistic. It's great. The natural sounds are mostly evident during the final fight with Goblin when Spidey is getting absolutely destroyed. The silence of the scene and just the sounds of Peter getting beaten is just so brutal. I love this scene because the audience never wants to see their hero get beaten. And in the scene Peter gets absolutely wrecked. His mask is blown to bits, his suit is full of holes. It hurts to see him get hurt and you just want him to get back up and fight, but there just seems to be no sign of recovery. This scene, in my opinion, only gets better when Goblin mentions killing MJ and Peter just gets this sudden burst of energy. The music swells. Oh, it's so amazing. I think this might be my favourite final fight in any Spider-Man movie, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. A quick thing I wanted to mention as well is something I really love and appreciate, and that's the colours, especially in what the characters wear during the Thanksgiving scene. So the colours are: Norman wears a blue shirt and a red tie, Peter wears a green shirt, Harry wears a green shirt and a red tie, and MJ wears a black dress. Now, why do I think this is important? Well, MJ wears a black dress because earlier in the film, Harry tells MJ that his father really likes black and that this would impress him. Norman is wearing red and blue because they are Spider-Man colours. Peter wears green because those are the Goblin's colours. And finally, Harry wears green and red because his best friend is Spider-Man and his father is the Goblin. In the long run, I don't really think this matters too much, but it's just something that I really appreciate and brings that little bit more character to the film, and I love it. Now on to my final pro of this movie, and this line is just something I absolutely adore. I have a father, his name was Ben Parker. This line hits me so hard in the feels because, as I previously mentioned, in his last conversation with Uncle Ben, he told him to stop pretending to be his father. Now Peter realises Ben wasn't pretending at all. He taught him everything. He taught him responsibility and how to care for others. Uncle Ben is the reason why Peter holds the responsibility of becoming Spider-Man. He's the reason why he protects his city and why he tries to do his best to prevent anything that happened to him happening to anyone else. Ben Parker was his father all along. Overall, this film is just as amazing as I remember it being. Obviously some of the effects and the dialogue are dated, but it still holds up in my opinion. This movie is just so fun. It manages to stay serious where it needs to be, but other than that, it's just truly like so fun and enjoyable to watch. I could watch it over and over and over again. If you guys haven't watched it in a while and are thinking about watching it, I highly recommend you do. I had a great time and I think you will too. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, go and check out the others on the channel. I would like to very kindly ask that if you enjoyed this video to subscribe and hit the notification bell We are so close to 2,000. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much. We are so grateful for the continued support, and I hope to see you all very, very soon in the next video featuring me. Goodbye.